Hello, everybody, and welcome to Deer Sports Podcast. My name is Faith Lynch, and I am so excited for our first episode. My goal of this podcast is for our guests to have a space to share their journey through sports and what it's taught them. I am so excited for our first guest, Walter Abercrombie. Walter was Baylor's star running back from 1978 to 1981. He's a member of the Baylor Athletics Hall of Fame while also having an 8-year career in the NFL. I was a first-round draft pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 1982, where he played for the Steelers through 1982 to 1987 before spending his final professional season with the Philadelphia Eagles. So, Walter, thank you so much for being here today.
Faith, it's great to join you. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, of course. We're just going to kind of jump right in. First, just tell us about yourself and what you do currently for Baylor.
Okay. Well, let's see. Let me tell you that I was born here in Waco, so okay. I was kind of always had a little bit of Baylor connection. I grew up literally 4 blocks from campus.
Awesome.
And so my dad was a Baptist preacher or pastor of a church, and so we had this great connection with Waco, Baylor, and even the Baptist religion that had tremendous influence on me and probably made it easier for me to select to come to Baylor when I was coming out of high school. And so I am now, let's see, this is my 20th year working at Baylor, 17 consecutive years with the B Association. There was about 3 years I had prior to taking my current position. I was working in academics over on campus. This is back in the 1990s, but yeah, so 20 years working with Baylor. I am the executive director of the B Association and associate athletic director in the athletic department. So being here 17 years, I've seen a lot of stuff, a lot of changes,
yes,
good and bad, but we have survived, and I love it. Getting the chance to work in athletics and to work with former athletes specifically.
Right.
Gosh, I can't think of a better job. So I'm really happy and thrilled to have been here and lasted as long as I did.
For sure. I think Baylor is one of those places that it really gives back to its athletes later on in life, which has been really cool to see. Especially my dad playing golf here, growing up, going to the Letterman's Lounge, being in that environment. It was always a dream for me too to make it there, and it was really cool being able to pick a school that watched the athletes still be connected post-athletic career is really cool. And so props to y'all for doing such a great job with that.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate your perspective because your father was a Letterman, and he is very involved in our organization, and I appreciate his support. But to have a young lady, a daughter now, to come along after he finished and to carry on that Lynch legacy, so to speak, and for you to be involved in the capacity you're involved. I'm very proud of you, and I know he is too.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So what is a day-to-day activity for you as the Associate Athletic Director of the B Association?
Yeah, so day-to-day, my job is to engage our exes, and that I do that in a number of ways. Either be a phone call or we start planning events where we can get together with ex-athletes. And when I say ex-athletes, I mean all sports, whether it be women, men, track, football, basketball, young or old. We have members who played as far back as 1950s. They're still living. Awesome. In the 1960s. And then we have younger people who are recent grads who get involved with our organization. And so it's a fun job. I get to contact them, find out what's going on in their lives, invite them to be a part of what we're building at Baylor. Most of the time, it's a pretty easy job because athletes, regardless of the sport they played in, really maintain a strong interest in their sport.
Right.
Not just their sport, but Baylor specifically, how Baylor is doing in that particular sport. And so there's there's a unique interest that they have, and it doesn't take a whole lot for them to want to get back involved and support in a lot of ways. And so in that way, my job is easy, but sometimes when people leave, they don't always leave their address or phone number. You have to chase them down. Once you find them, you contact them and say, hey, man, we're going to be in your city, or we're going to have this event here on campus. Want you to come back. Or we may decide we're going to honor them in some way and get them come back and be a part of it. So it's a fun job. We get great acceptance. And the university is a small university, private, compared to some of the state schools in our conference. So our group is a small group, but a very, very important group and a very active group.
For sure. That's awesome. And it's really cool to be able to walk in there and see all of the older men that played football, but also to see the young volleyball player who is recently married and she's bebopping in there. And it's a cool way for athletes from all generations to connect, it's a cool experience. So you kind of mentioned it before, you're from Waco, but tell us your journey of getting to Baylor, the recruiting process, why Baylor. Tell us all of that.
Okay, if I can go back that far in my memory, let's see. I do know that, I remember living on South 8th Street, and there was a youth group from Baylor that used to come down into our neighborhood. And as a kid, we'd be playing football in the street or something, and here come, and it was a predominantly black neighborhood. So then you'd have these young college students, these white kids coming from, I think, one of the churches, maybe 7th and James Baptist Church there near campus. They would have a youth group that would come down into our neighborhood and basically talk to us about Christ,
Wow.
And witness to us. And then not only that, but then they would say, we'd like you to come back to the church, and they would have punch and cookies. Well, that was great for us because all of us wanted punch and cookies, right? So we would go back with them, and it was a short distance, and we'd have punch and cookies at the church like they said they would have, and then they'd have a little session, and they'd talk to us about our faith and if we knew Jesus Christ, and they would witness to us in a way that was I thought bridge building for many of us, and relationship building. I didn't know any of these kids, but they cared enough about us to come and talk about the Lord. And so that had a big impact on me as a kid. I felt like I got to know some of them in a way that I would not have otherwise. And so when I got old enough to make a decision to what college I was going to attend, those experiences that I had as a kid, they came back to me, and I remembered them, and I thought, if this school sent people out into our neighborhood that cared about us and wanted to save our souls, then I should give this school an opportunity to display my talent and to come there. So that's where it all started. Coach Taft was another big reason. A lot of people probably would think that that's probably the main reason, but Grant Taft was just an outstanding coach, tremendous influence on me, and he recruited me to come to Baylor. And anybody that's ever been recruited by Coach Taft, it's not a whole lot of folks turn him down. So, but I really admired him, felt like he was the right kind of coach I needed to play for, so I made the decision to come.
That's really cool. That's really encouraging, too, I think, as a current athlete to want to be able to go into the community and give back. Baylor does a great job of setting up service organizations like that for us to go and do that. And not gonna lie, sometimes it's hard to want to on your off day to go and serve and to do that. But hearing that, I think I'm more encouraged, and hopefully other athletes that listen are encouraged to want to give back and to leave Baylor's legacy continuing to go on. Because I feel the same way about Baylor now. It's very Christ-oriented, service-oriented, and so it's really cool that is part of your story. That's awesome.
Yeah, made a big difference.
Yeah, that's so cool. So as you're here, so you spoke about Grant Taft a little bit.
Yeah.
Talk about your relationship with him. He was still kind of new, still had his program doing, had done well, but talk about your relationship with him.
Sure. Grant Taft is, I would say, like a father to me. He really is. I played for him for 4 years here, but I knew a whole lot about him before I made the decision to come to Baylor. I watched he and his team win the Southwest Conference Championship in 1974. I probably was around, 15 years old or so. And those guys didn't have a great team, but not great in the sense of a whole lot of talent.
Right.
But they played like champions, man, and they beat Texas, and the way they did in that game, I'll never forget it. And so I felt like if they could win the conference, if Baylor could win the Southwest Conference Championship in a conference that included Arkansas and Texas and Texas A&M, I felt like, I could go and compete at a very high level.
Yeah.
So Grant, Coach Taft gave me the opportunity. I came and I just as fortune would have it, my career went well, and the 1980 team, got a chance to win the championship as well.
Yes, y'all did.
So we had a lot of talent on the team: Dennis Gentry, Mike Singletary, Van McElroy. Oh gosh, just Cedric Mack, Charles Benson. I could just on and on and on about the talent we had on that team. Tommy Tabor, Joe Campbell, Radar Holt. Man, those names were just associated with championships, man, and winning. And when I think of them now, even though I went to play for 8 seasons in the National Football League, the Steelers and the Eagles. So, I think of winning, and my most memorable experiences were those that I had here at Baylor, believe it or not.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I had some great memories in Pittsburgh, and so, but yeah, right here at Baylor, I think because of my close relationship and the way that Coach Taft helped our team bond and grow together, and it's really memorable and great memories, by the way.
That's awesome. I know my dad always talks about his collegiate memories with his teammates and just so much fun. A lot of them have nothing to do with golf, and I'm sure yours probably don't have a lot to do with football. Do you have one that sticks out to you of a teammate or just something like a fun story?
Well, I was talking about Grant Taft a moment ago. He was a tremendous builder of men as well. Yeah. He was not only a great coach, but he helped guide us and as young men. He was a great example for us. And that couldn't have been more evident than what happened to one of our players during the time I was at Baylor. We had a player that during a practice was hit by another player and broke his neck and became a quadriplegic.
Oh, gosh.
And, a lot of coaches and people, schools, it would have been easy to forget about that player. He was no longer contributing much. But Coach Taft never forgot about this guy, and matter of fact, made him sort of our mascot, so to speak, through the next few years. He was very important, inspirational guy to us. He never regained his ability to walk, but he was very close to our team, and he remained close to our team for the next 4 years. And I think, he graduated. He ended up getting, I think several of the players got together some years later and bought him a van that he could drive,
That's awesome.
And even a house to live in. There was a handicap set up for handicaps. And so that was driven a lot by Coach Taft. A lot of that effort, love and concern and for Kyle Woods, that was his name, was driven by Coach Taft. And because of his leadership with the way he treated Kyle, many of us felt the same way and wanted to rally around Kyle ourselves in support of him for the rest of his life. And that's what many of us did. He remained very close and an inspiration to us even as adults when we left Baylor. And so anyway, that's not a fun story, but it was a meaningful story that impacted nearly everybody on the team.
That's awesome. And I think it's just such a statement to sports, too, that it teaches you so much more than being athletic, working out. It like you said, it creates you to learn how to be a man, learn how to be a grown woman, and to handle yourself and work with different people and go through adversity. I mean, he obviously had a life-changing experience, and his life was changed forever. So just speaks volumes to Grant Taft and to y'all's team to rally around him. So going through all of that and kind of coming into who you are and your own personality, how do you feel like that helped you get ready for the NFL and for the NFL draft? If you could go back as well to yourself in that time, is there anything you would have changed?
1982, we'd come off of not a very great season in 81. A lot of the players from the championship team had graduated and moved on to other things. So we still had a pretty good team, but the 81 season didn't go as well as we wanted it to go. But, I had kind of established myself as one of the top backs in the country. And so when the 82 draft came around, someone had mentioned to me that, hey, man, you're one of the top 5 backs in the nation. The seniors, they're coming out, and you're probably going to go in the first round. And I thought, at that time, I never even considered myself an NFL caliber back. Yeah, I was like, first round. I didn't I'm making plans to, maybe go to the Army or something, and so it was really a shocker for me. I'm not kidding. I knew I had some talent, but I didn't know I would be considered as a top draft pick. And so, sure enough, the draft came around. I was drafted in the first round by the Steelers, and man, it was just a whole new world for me because it caught me by surprise. And then I was thrown into this kind of world of being a pro athlete pretty quickly. And while that was fun, it was learning. I moved to Pittsburgh, which is the first time I'd ever really been out of Waco.
Right, yeah.
So I got to Pittsburgh and really fell in love with those people there, and had a chance to play for one of the great NFL coaches ever, and that's Chuck Noll. I went to play when I got there. Almost the whole team were NFL Hall of Famers.
Wow.
There's on offense, there was Terry Bradshaw was my quarterback, Lynn Swann, the great wide receiver, Mike Webster, the center, who was a Hall of Famer. Oh, gosh, John Stallworth, Benny Cunningham, Franco Harris was in the backfield, the great running back from Penn State. And it was pretty amazing experience for me.
That's
and I was
really
intimidated, to say the least. I never saw myself being good enough, but I was thankful to have the experience and then to realize as a player, even later in my career like that I was actually good enough to play professionally. And on defense, man, on that same team, they had Mel Blount, Donnie Shell, Jack Lambert, Jack Ham. When I think about going into the locker room and seeing those guys for the first time, in person, I can't tell you what that was like, man. I was scared.
The movie stars are real. They're real people.
Here these guys are. And I grew up a Dallas Cowboy fan.
Okay.
So I would watch the Cowboys lose to the Steelers in the Super Bowl. So I don't know how I felt about those guys.
Right.
But I quickly learned why they were so great.
Yeah.
And not only great players, what I was so fortunate to have in terms of an introduction to the NFL is to go to a team with a lot of great men. Mm-hmm. And this is something I had at Baylor, being shaped by Coach Taft and just high-quality guys that Coach would recruit to come to Baylor. That same type of caliber player was in Pittsburgh. And I never will forget just the great influence that had on me and making sure that I kept my head on straight and that I knew how to deal with the temptations that came along with being a young guy in a big city with a little bit of money. So I'm very fortunate in that regard.
That's definitely tough, and I think I feel for the guys in the NBA right now, the one and dones. I feel like that's super popular right now, and I'm like, these 18, 19, 20-year-olds are now just thrown into the fire, and it's so tough. So to have that experience at Baylor and then to go to Pittsburgh and to have those same people around you, I mean, that's lucky. You don't find that everywhere.
Well, I tell you, Faith, it kind of goes back to the experience I had as a young child. And you never know what how those experiences as a kid can manifest itself in your life later on.
Yeah.
So if you look at the way that I was able to handle myself during that period of time when I came into a lot of money and I came into a lot of fame as a pro player, it really was about who I was, what influences I had as a young person. And that goes all the way back to those young college students from Baylor coming down into our neighborhood and talking about, hey, I know you guys are football players, but let me tell you a little bit about Jesus Christ. And so when it came to those moments where I had to really kind of figure out who I was, I could lean back on those memories as a kid, those memories at Baylor with a great mentor like Coach Taft. And I think it helped shape the decisions that I made in those moments where there were temptations to come along. And who knows what kind of trouble I stayed out of, man. I mean, because of that influence. So I'm thankful, man, and grateful that that Baylor and the coaches and the influences I had early on in my life came back to manifest themselves in my life as a pro athlete.
That's awesome. That's really good. So back in April, I think I had the privilege of announcing the John Westbrook Award with you.
Yeah.
At the Golden Bruisers, the awards show that SACE, Student Athletic Center for Excellence, puts on for athletes. It's a really fun time for all of us to get together and to celebrate our seasons. So we both were able to present the John Westbrook Award. Could you speak on that award, what it means to you growing up in a predominantly Black community, the impact that had on you in your life and your decision for Baylor?
Yeah, so in September 1965, it may have been actually 1966, Baylor played Syracuse University on national television. And there was a time when I was a kid, I watched that game on television. And of course, Baylor was my team, right? And so I got a chance. We didn't have tickets to go to the game, and so we watched it on television because it was offered on TV. And so my dad, who just, I think he bought a color television, and so the game was in color. Most of the games we had seen up to that point was a black and white. Black and white.
That's awesome.
But the game was in color, and Baylor, that game somewhere in the maybe the second half somewhere, put in John Westbrook. And up to that point, we had never seen a Black player play for Baylor.
Wow.
And so I remember just when John went into the game. Now, John, going into the game, he broke the color barrier not only at Baylor, but in the Southwest Conference.
Right.
So he was the first Black player to play in a football game in the Southwest Conference. And so I got a chance to see that. And as a young kid, like I said, who had dreams and aspirations, but I didn't think they would ever be realized at a college like that. There were some HBCUs that I thought if I had a chance to go play, it would be at one of those schools. Where here's a guy who goes into a football game that's my color, look like me, and he plays. He plays for the school that I in the neighborhood where I grew up. And I thought at the time, well, let me just say that my imagination was lit up, because what seemed impossible all of a sudden seemed possible. Mm-hmm. So John Westbrook's playing. Now, he didn't go on to become a great player, but he graduated from Baylor, went on to a fine career. I think he was in the ministry. But he was the type of guy, as I got to know him later on in life, that he was the right guy to be the person to break the color barrier, because you realize what a quality man he was. And since that time, he died as a young man, but I got to know his family later on, and they're a tremendous family. But John Westbrook was a tremendous influence on me in the sense that I saw him playing in a Baylor football uniform, and I imagined as a kid myself being the same way. It lit up my imagination and my dreams of maybe one day going to Baylor and playing, and that was the example that I saw.
That's awesome. I think it's so cool that you got to almost give back to that as well as you accomplished it. You did it. You went to Baylor and you played and you were able to set the example for other students. And I think all athletes, we all have that one person that has sparked an interest of like, oh, I want to be like them. And so for you to be able to be that person for somebody else, I think is so cool. And it gives me chills. I mean, it's a full circle kind of moment, and it's rare, but it's really inspiring.
It is inspiring. When we think about the award you just mentioned, the John Hill Westbrook Award, it's an award for courage and perseverance, right? So we know that because of what he went through as an athlete, and it wasn't easy for him.
Right.
He faced a lot of hate, so to speak, not just from folks around the opponents that Baylor played, but some right here in their own Baylor family. Who didn't want to see a black player play, So John had the right kind of courage, and he displayed a lot of perseverance just through the experiences of being on the team at that time and what he had to go through. And as I got older, I got to know more about him and more about his life and what he experienced here. And it's pretty amazing that he was able to maintain his composure, he stayed true to his dreams, and he fought through all of the negativity, and turned out to be a great individual with tremendous character, and so his courage and his perseverance, I think, can be an inspiration to the players today. As we give that award out, you think about some of the things that those athletes who received the award, what they had to go through to get nominated for that award. I mean, those type of things and challenges and courages they face, they're still today. So it's relatable to the young people today. And I'm so glad that the athletic department has decided to continue giving that award out to recognize people who have gone through those type of challenges.
For sure. I think SACE does such a great job of implementing those things and making sure that in those times of trials and, adversity, that we're taken care of and we have all the resources to help us get through those things as well. I mean, being a student athlete it's hard. Yeah. You're still a person. You still have feelings and you still have to go through life. And especially now being in the public eye, these guys are thrown into the media and it's just everything is amplified. But for SACE to have stuff like that to shine light of like, you did it. Yeah. And someone before you did it as well, and people are going to continue to go through it. So a really cool moment, and it was so fun to randomly be paired together to present that award. That was so cool. Definitely little Faith was kind of fangirling a little bit. So that was awesome.
You were a superstar on the stage. Are you kidding me?
Thank you. So you've mentioned the Southwest Conference, and that changed to the Big 12. With everything that's going on in the world, with all the conference switches, people jumping ship going on, what is your take on it, and what do you think that looks like for the future of Baylor athletics?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know. I'm just keeping my eye on the situation and just I think that over the last 10 to 12 years, Baylor has made some advancements. I think that has helped its cause in those situations. The facilities we have on campus are some of the best. Our graduation rate, our student athletes, always near the top, and just what we're producing on the field and the court, can't be denied. You win a national championship in men's basketball, national championship in women's basketball, and you win you're one of the top teams in the country in football. You win a Big 12 championship just a couple of years ago, and then or just last year. I'm sorry. Then go and become a Sugar Bowl champion. That says that there's a lot of great things about your program. Now, what are those accomplishments mean in terms of appealing to television networks and conference alignments and so forth? It's a different matter. A lot of times it's about how many people can you attract in terms of your audience, and how many alumni do you have, that follow your program. And so Baylor is at a disadvantage in that regard when it comes to appealing to some of the big conferences. But at the same time, we're highly, highly competitive in all of the other areas that the measures that they look at in terms of conference inclusion. So I'm optimistic. We have a tremendous athletic director. We're very fortunate to have Mac Rhodes, who's really one of the great leaders in college athletics today. And I trust his leadership. I also trust the leadership of our president, Linda Livingstone. Yeah. Boy, it would be hard pressed to find two greater representatives for Baylor University when it comes time to talk about where the future of Baylor is going to be. And if there's any influence they have, it's going to be strong influence to the other conference rivals and members. So I'm optimistic because I think even with the recruits that we have to come to Waco, first time they come to town, they're sold on Waco. They're sold on Baylor. If you can ever, it used to be, there was a saying years ago that if you could ever get a recruit to come to Waco, you got him.
Right.
And because of the tremendous campus, the beautiful campus, the students that we have here, and it is really an awesome school. So we got all the parts of the puzzle. I don't have enough information to make a prediction about where Baylor's going to end up in terms of conference alignment. I just know that whoever gets us in a conference, they're going to have to beat us on the field and the court. And so that's always a big challenge. They may beat us at the audience and the folks tuning in, but what's actually going on the field or the court is a whole nother matter.
I love that. That gets me so fired up. Oh, gosh. I think you're so right in saying that we have such great leadership. Getting recruits here, they ask questions, especially with everything going on. They're like, are we going to move? What's going to happen? The Big Ten is really good at volleyball. So are we going to move to the Big Ten, And I just have to reassure them. I'm like, look, Baylor's the same. We're going to remain consistent. I don't even worry about it because I trust Mac Rhodes and Linda Livingstone so much because I know that I was talking about this with someone the other day that Linda played basketball, and she was an athlete, and so they've done it, and so I trust her from a female athlete. I'm like, she's going to make the right decision for us as well. She's not just going to think about football, which is reassuring and makes us feel valued, which is nice. It's not everywhere.
Absolutely.
So with football season coming up, when you watch, are you looking at your position only? How do you watch? What are your predictions for Baylor? I know I always look at the DS setting position to kind of see how they're doing in other teams. What are you looking at?
Now you're going to expose me a little bit. I am looking, when I first got out of ball, when I first stopped being a player, and when I became a fan, that's all I ever watched is the running back position.
Right.
Boy, I could give you a great commentary about running backs, how good they are, how bad they are. And then as I started to learn more about, become a more well-rounded fan, I started looking more at the offensive schemes and the other positions, particularly offensive line. I really focused on the offensive line and how offenses really impacted the game. And the changes that offenses have made through the years,
right?
Much more passing now than when I was a running back as a player. To now, I'm able to look at the game now and be just as focused on defense and the cornerback position, linebacker positions than I ever was. And so, believe it or not, I'm able to enjoy and take in a game at a much higher level now than I was as a player.
Yeah.
That might be crazy to some people, but I'm able to look at it, and there's no pressure. I'm not having to worry about competing in my mind about anybody. You know,
Right.
I'm just looking at and now we can run the plays back. If you watch it on television or instant replays, you kind of see what you missed,
Right. Yeah.
and so it makes it fun to
Yeah.
analyze the game, and so it's a lot more fun. I'm having a great time.
That's awesome.
Even though I work on game days and we have to host a lot of folks in the lounge, I am glued to that television. We have a big screen TV in the letter winners lounge at the stadium, and so all of our fans who stay in the room and watch the game, I'm right there with them, man. I'm like looking at the game, I'm like, and as loud as a cheerleader as you've ever heard. So I've become more of a fan, a more sophisticated fan now than I ever was as a younger player.
That's awesome. And I mean, too, like technology has changed so much. Like you said,
Sure.
instant replay. It's almost kind of a different game now, just with so much change. And that's awesome, though, that you can enjoy it. I'm always curious, like, do they just still watch their position? What's going on? That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of players, when they retire, if you play for a while, the game is hard to watch,
Yes.
because you're seeing things that are happening. You're just going, why are you doing that? So you don't want to watch it. But if you can get beyond that, and I know this happens with older players as they age, they get back in front of the television, or they go back to being a fan, and they enjoy the game for just the love of the game. And a lot of times it really doesn't matter who wins or loses. You just enjoy the competition and all the other things that go along with it. And I think it's much more entertaining now. It's more fun to watch. The players are so talented,
Yeah.
unbelievable catches, these circus catches, and some of the things athletes do today make it fun for everybody. And I'm a big football fan, but I'm also a big basketball fan.
Okay.
And so, what Scott Drew is doing at Baylor basketball is pretty amazing. I just love that guy.
He's a cool dude.
He is a cool dude. He's a great coach, and the way he's having to adjust to coach those teams each year, and now it's going to be an even bigger challenge because he's going to have players that'll come and stay 1 year and they'll leave and go play pro ball, and so his ability to coach and adjust to with the talent that he has at that particular moment, I think is going to be a big difference maker for him. He can do it, and he's shown he can do it, and so he'll be one of the greats in the profession as we go forward.
For sure. It's really cool to be able to say that I get to practice in the Farrell Center. I get to share that
Right.
national championship energy. Hopefully it'll rub up on us soon. Yeah, he's a cool guy. Okay, so for our last question.
Okay.
It's Dear Sports. My intent behind it is I want our guests to be able to write a love letter to sports. So if you could write a letter to sports in a couple of words, what would you say? What would you sum it up? If sports was a person, what would you want to say to them?
Dear Sports, thank you for giving me the opportunity to grow as a person, to display my skills that God gave me. And I would just say thank you for the tremendous people and influences that have been in my life through sports. Dear Sports, thank you just for giving me a chance to be a professional, to play in a professional league because of my sports, because of my talent. Thank you for, like I said, all of the friendships that I've had through sports. Some of the friends that I have to this very day, my lifelong friends I met, we were teammates. And so I owe a lot to sports. I owe a lot the things that I learned in sports, the lessons, the values, how to play fairly.
Yeah.
All those things, I taught to my children. So sports has done a lot for me. So if I had to write a letter to Dear Sports, I'd say thank you for the great life you've allowed me to live and for the influence that you've given me that I could pass along to my children.
That's awesome. And thank you so much for being on our podcast today.
Yes.
I appreciate
Thank
it.
you, Faye.
First episode. You're one of the greats, so it's such an honor to have you. Thank you for watching our first episode on Dear Sports with me, Faith Lynch. You can find us on Instagram at Dear Sports Podcast. Don't forget to check out the link tree in our bio. It's going to be able to take you to our YouTube channel, Apple Podcast, and Spotify pages. And until next time, this is Faith Lynch with Dear Sports.